Good afternoon, folks, or good evening and good morning, wherever it is that you are. Thank you for joining me. My name is Chris, and I am the channel owner here at White Raven Gaming. If you're not familiar, I am an independent game designer. I mostly design games for tabletop role-playing games and war games, different systems, as well as my own things. I also do occasionally design board games and may work in some development for computer games. So specifically this video we're going to be talking about my newest creation, the newest product that I have out, which is Redoubt of the Apocalypse. Redoubt of the Apocalypse is a supplement for tabletop role-playing games, allowing a player or a game master to simulate the growth and development of a community surviving in a post-apocalyptic environment. So kind of imagine maybe The Walking Dead, or possibly something along the lines of Mad Max, and that's what we're looking at here. And specifically, this set of rules, it's written with Free League's Year Zero engine in mind as the primary rule set, and you're going to see a lot of the rules are based on that. However, I have made adaptations, so variants for 5th edition, variants for Pathfinder 1st edition. I'm working on a few others, but those are pretty much it, is Year Zero, Pathfinder, and 5th edition. That being said, what I'm going to do today in this video is I'm going to do a quick explainer showing kind of the basic concepts of the game. Then a little bit later I'll be releasing some videos showing some solo playthroughs, showing how your game master might prepare some communities that might be in your game. And then if you are a solo player, this will give you an idea of how to, use this system yourself, because it is, part of the goal of it was that I designed it with solo play in mind. So with that being said, let's go ahead and take a look at the product itself. All right, folks, before we begin talking about the rules, I just want to point out that if you're interested in the product, you can find it at DriveThruRPG. Currently, I cannot post links in the descriptions of my videos, so I can't really give you, a direct link at this time. That being said, if you just go to DriveThru and type in Redoubts of the Apocalypse, pretty much as you see it in the title there, or as close as you can get to it, it should bring you to the product in question if you want to pick up a copy. Currently, it's selling for, so the base price of it is $7.99. Currently, I'm having a Labor Day sale of $4 on this product. If you reach out and just put if you reach out via comment, I will happily send you a link for a discount on this product, bringing it down to $4. At any time, just reach out, comment on this video, or I guess comment on another video. I don't think there's a direct message application on YouTube, but you could also go to the Adrenar YouTube, or the Adrenar Reddit, and ask for it there. But yeah, feel free to buy it at the regular price, of course, as well. But yeah, so that's the product itself, and we're going to be taking a little closer look, and I'm going to try to keep this brief about the rules and give you an idea of what my mindset was going into the design here. Alright, so when I designed Redoubts, I actually got the inspiration from one of Free League's games, their Walking Dead game. The Walking Dead game came with a pretty simple yet cool, very rules-light mechanic for tracking the home base of your characters. I think they called the system Havens or something like that. It was fairly streamlined in that you were tracking, I believe it was a community's capacity and their safety, and it kind of mentioned, hey, you can build improvements in order to increase these, so on and so forth. However, really beyond those kind of bare bones structures, it really didn't give too much insight, didn't provide a list of improvements or anything like that, which is great if you have a very creative GM or someone who's very experienced in running the system. But if you've got a new GM or somebody who doesn't really concentrate too much on like balance issues or whatnot, that can kind of get interesting. So I thought, okay, I think I want to go ahead and create just an addendum to this, at least a list of improvements. And as I was developing this list of improvements and this rule set, the animal kind of escaped. I do still consider this system that I've developed a year zero system, so that's the primary system, even though I have adapted it for other RPG systems like 5th edition and Pathfinder. That being said, it is a year zero system, and you'll see that inflected with the primary mechanics. But essentially, what it boils down to is that you or your characters are going to be the leadership of a redoubt here, and they're going to be making decisions on a weekly basis. And each week is roughly, is not just roughly, but is a turn in this system. And every week you're going to be doing things like assigning labor, consuming resources and materials in order to produce things. So on and so forth. And of course, every week when you assign labor, you're going to be rolling checks. And the goal is to develop the redoubt by building improvements or gathering resources, increasing the population, and recruiting new characters. Improving the redoubt so that its capacity, supply, and safety scores all increase to increase the sustainability and survivability of this community in a post-apocalyptic world. Now, very simply put, in terms of these three main mechanics, well, I guess fourth if you include population. With population is going to be an abstract number. Well, not abstract. It's going to be a number that doesn't quite exactly correlate. So, like 1 point of population might represent 12 people, 2 points might represent 19, 3 points might represent 32 people, so there's kind of a geometric increase going on. The rules give a little bit more taste of that for role-playing purposes. But for these three scores here, the capacity, supply, and safety, you want those numbers, usually you want them to equal or exceed your current population. In terms of capacity and supply, they need to equal or exceed, or there's usually some negative drawbacks that happen. So for example, if you don't have high enough capacity, you can't grow your population. If you don't have high enough supply, you're literally not feeding your people, therefore your community is going to suffer damage, your officers and your characters might even suffer damage. And then safety, there's not a direct negative that happens from not meeting your safety needs, but when a peril comes along, so a flood or zombies or something like that, it can have a very, very negative effect. Alright, as we had stated previously, every week with your survival community, you're going to be managing labor and other resources in order to try to improve your community. Very early on, you're probably going to be putting a lot of very limited labor into building up different structures, different improvements in your community. So a lot of the rule book is dedicated to different improvements that you can build. So for example, here we have a listing of capacity improvements. And you'll probably be going for either capacity or supply improvements very early on whenever you start a new redoubt, a new community. And any time that you put a point of labor into a specific action, you can see here I've got my laminated sheet, so the points are meant to be moved around. The statistics change as you need them to. Whenever you put a point into a action, that causes that action, to trigger for that week, for that round, and that will cause you to roll dice for that action. And I would like to take just a few seconds to explain the core mechanic. So let's assume here that we're putting 2 points of labor into the build action. And build is, of course, going to be used for construction of new improvements. Pretty self-explanatory. I think all of these are pretty self-explanatory. So with the build action, and it states further or earlier in the rules that every point of labor results in 4 dice, or excuse me, every point of labor results in 2 d6s being added to the roll. We'll talk about officers and leadership bonuses later. Actually, we'll talk about that in another video per se. But let's just concentrate on the core mechanic, which is the 4d6 being rolled due to 2 labor being assigned. So the way Free League's system works... Wow, I really messed that up. The way Free League's system works is that you're going to take a number of dice. You're going to put them in your rolly cup or your dice tower, whatever you got. And you're going to roll a number of dice. And however many 6s that you score, or however many 6s that come up during your roll, that's how many successes you've gotten on that check. So, for example, with the build action, every single 6 results in a construction point. And if you look closely at the improvements chart, you can see that each improvement costs a construction point. Now, assigning points of labor to different actions, that can be costly in its own way, and we'll discuss that in a future video. But for right now, let's just go ahead and roll on and see how it looks when we actually roll the dice. So, this week, all of our labor is dedicated to build, and let's see what happens. Okay, so as you can see here, not one of them scored a 6, which of course, if we're going by statistics, you're going to need at least 6 to score 1 per week. There are other ways to modify this. There's some rerolls and so forth that come along with that. But that really covers it, in terms of the base mechanic. And as you can see there, with these dice, and this came from the Walking Dead Free League RPG, the 6 there that is indicated by that little bullseye, that indicates a success. Oh, and one last thing is part and parcel to any Free League RPG is a concept in most character-based or character-centric systems. They're called stress die or something equivalent to that. In Redoubts, you can accumulate what's called risk. So your Redoubt, your community, can accumulate risk representing kind of risky practices, strategic faults, or people not doing their job, so on and so forth. And you accumulate this in quite a few different ways. Not only can you accumulate it from, encountering strange or scary things like you can with a stress point, but you can accumulate risk from even just using poor materials. And some of the goods, specifically, like if you're using canned food and the canned food is bad, that can accumulate risk for your community. Whenever you accumulate risk, every single roll that you do that is one of these main rolls, you're going to roll a number of additional dice equal to your risk score. So, for example, if we have 1 risk point, we're going to be rolling 1 additional d6 as indicated by this red d6, in addition to the 4 d6 that would normally come with this specific build action. So for this specific build on this specific week, if we have 1 risk and we're assigning 2 labor, we're actually going to be rolling 5d6, 4d6 as a result of the assignment of labor, and 1d6 as a result of the risk point that we've incurred sometime in the past. Now, risk points, like any other, or risk dice, like any other dice, when they land on a 6, that is a success. So that would generate a construction point. And that would, of course, help you meet your needs, get this tent city built a little bit faster, so on and so forth. And by the by, if you have 1 improvement that you're working on and you complete it, any unallocated construction points, you can immediately pick another improvement and just start building it. So there's no such thing as wasted construction points or wasted successes in this system. The risk die immediately, could give you a chance for another construction point, another success. So what's the trade-off there? Why is a risk die bad? Well, if a risk die lands on a 1, as indicated by this zombified hand in these red die, that is a critical failure. So the way I traditionally treat Redoubt, and your game masters can change it, but I usually say that The first critical failure on a red, and it's only for red die. So you'll notice black die. If a black die rolls a 1, doesn't have a zombie hand, that is not a critical failure. That's just a roll that didn't come up well, right? If you get a red hand, the first risk die that results in a 1 is going to automatically cancel out your roll. So it's going to make it unsuccessful. So, for example, you could have rolled 3 successes in black dice and 1 critical failure, and that will literally negate all 3 successes. So you don't get any construction points, you don't get any successes. You just fail that roll, fail to make any progress. Which is bad enough by itself. However, as a standard or a secondary rule, I guess, whenever I game master, if there's more than 1 risk die being rolled, so let's say there are 2 and they both happen to land on 1s, if there are 2 or more critical failures on a roll, not only does it fail, but it's going to immediately create a peril. So it's going to immediately create a something bad is going to happen. So it could be zombies attracted in the case of a zombie, zombie apocalypse type game. It could be zombies are attracted. It could be a fire breaks out, a flood. The flood walls are breached, and it starts flooding into the town. All sorts of crazy things. Whenever you have a risk die or whenever you have risk points, you want to try to do your best to get rid of them as soon as you can, within reason. Now, one of the things to keep in mind is that Redoubts of the Apocalypse is meant to complement a standard tabletop role-playing game. So people who solo these, they'll notice that, especially if you're just rolling for what happens to the communities, if they don't have quote-unquote heroes, if they don't have a party going out and adventuring, I would suggest nominating some of your officers to be a party to do that. But if they don't, you're going to have the buildup is going to be a lot slower, and you're going to always be on the knife's edge and probably die fairly early or fairly often whenever you simulate these communities. So that's just to say, if you don't have a party that's actually going out there and doing things, it's going to be tough for your communities. And because whenever your party goes out there and does things, like they might explore a sports outfitter or something and find some weapons. They might find a grocery store and find a hidden cache of foods, and they bring back a whole, thing of a whole bunch of canned foods and stuff like that. And those can quite literally represent, in this game, for example, there's a good called canned goods. They might find 1 unit of canned goods because of the secret stash they found at the grocery store. Player actions, the player agency, and a party actually going out there and doing things and kind of advancing a plot will always advance the community, the Redoubt. Whereas if you don't have that kind of going hand in hand at the same time that you're doing a community simulation, let's say you're simulating a community as a game master just to see where they are, just realize that community is going to be a tiny bit underpowered compared to a player community that has gone on for the same amount of time. If you take 8 turns, aka 8 weeks of a NPC community, and they have no heroes, compared to 8 weeks of a community manned by players, that community manned by players is probably going to be about twice or maybe even 3 times as much in terms of resources and power that they've accumulated, simply because they could go out and find canned goods or materials and so forth. So anyhow, that is kind of the basic concept behind Redoubts. I don't want to talk too much more about it at this point. I do invite you to come. I'm going to be rolling up some communities as some like a second or third video, just showing how the system works in play. So definitely check that out if you're interested. If you've already been sold, feel free to go over to DriveThruRPG, especially if it is Labor Day, because I'm going to do a Labor Day sale where everything's half off. If it's not Labor Day, just leave a comment, and if I see it, I will drop you a link, literally a link that you can just use to get 50% off at any time. Anyhow, thank you for watching. I do appreciate, and if you want to learn more about this or other games that I'm developing, feel free to like and subscribe and all that jazz. I'm not really, a YouTuber per se. I just, have to have somewhere to put up some information about the games and stuff that I develop. Anyhow, thanks for watching, and I hope you'll have a great day. I really mean that. Bye-bye.